These are my top 5 favorite off-season or in-season strength and mobility-based movements for snowboarders that everybody, and I mean everybody, should be doing. It is officially my second favorite time of year, pre-season. The stoke is high, everybody's getting ready for the winter that's coming, but it is also the time that we should be setting the foundation to make the most epic winter you've ever had. Here we go. Before we get started, my name is Mark. I am a doctor of physical therapy and snowboard instructor at Mount Bachelor, and with my wife, Sarah, who is the other half of Mobility Duo, who is a yoga instructor, massage therapist, health teacher, etc. We do all of this for snowboarders because we love it so much. We want to keep you riding until we were 70 plus years old. Nothing can truly replace the art of snowboarding on the hill in those conditions, but we can do everything we can to create a solid foundation to protect our bodies, minds, and everything else in between. It's very obvious that a lot of these are strength mobility based. Most of us understand why we're doing them, but how can we connect them to snowboarding and the snowboard athlete? So in saying that, that is my goal, to explain thoroughly how and why these both are connected, how they can benefit you, and how you can implement them in your normal day-to-day routine. For those of you who have not seen us before, I generally love very minimally based movements, so I don't use a lot of fancy equipment. So I tried to make that the same with these. So the first one that we have is a Kettlebell Arm Bar. It doesn't have to be a kettlebell, it can also be a dumbbell. Kettlebell just has the weight distributed on one side, which tends to be a little bit more challenging, but here we go. So I'm gonna get on my side, like so. Make sure I don't crush my microphone. That's never good. So with this, if I'm doing this on my left side or my right, it doesn't really matter, but I wanna turn towards you. So whatever side that your weight is on, the knee is going to be bent and hovering on that same side, all right? Some things to note. I want to continue using my diaphragmatic breathing, allowing my belly to expand, keeping the back of my rib cage down towards the floor. I'm going to press that kettlebell or dumbbell away, protract. As I turn, my eyes follow that kettlebell. I also externally rotate my arm like so. My knee doesn't have to touch. Now at this point, I can hold it right here, also keeping that protraction in my scapula, and return, pushing my lower rib cage back down into the floor. I can drop the weight back down, or I can keep it elevated like so. Remember, protract, push, punch towards the roof. Use my core and my thoracic mobility to bring that knee over, while also externally rotating that arm, pointing the thumb away, or keeping that thumb up. Now at this point, my arm is stacked, the weight, I can stay here all day if I want, all right? So primarily what we're doing here, this is a primary shoulder strength and stabilizer, as well as some spinal mobility. Now, if I wanna make this even harder, okay, I can add a little bit of clockwise or counterclockwise rotation, so I can aid a little bit in that range. Now, obviously this is going to require more of my shoulder, so for those of you who have discomfort in the shoulder, be careful. I would stop right here, but for those who want to improve a little bit of that mobility and stability, mobility again in that shoulder, I can add a little bit of range, finding those limits. Now be careful with this, I don't want to be overly strained. Now if you find that your neck is starting to get a little sore, just relax. I can stay here again or come back down, all right? So with this, depending on the amount of weight that I'm using, I can load it up. I can really load that weight up, and I would keep that rep range pretty low. But for those of you who are just starting, I can probably keep the range pretty high. So I would be looking for that 12 to 14 to 16 range on one side. I don't need a ton of sets with this. But again, with that endurance and that stability, I might need to increase that rep range just a little bit. If I feel powerful, I can again increase the weight. So enjoy that. The reasoning behind this is upper extremity, arms, wrists, elbows, shoulders are the primary injured joints with snowboarders with that Fuchs mechanism. So primarily, that's why I love this movement. because it's a nice combination of strength, mobility, and stability. Okay, next, we have some plyometrics and reactive-based exercises, okay? So right now I have a lacrosse ball. You don't need a lacrosse ball. You can literally use a sock or something around the house, a pen, whatever you want it to be. I'm just being extra fancy today. Tennis ball, whatever it is. So the idea here is plyometrics. Why do we do them? We strengthen the joints, we strengthen the soft tissue to be able to handle force. You know, generally a plyometric, let's say something as simple as jumping side to side. I can do a box jump, I can do a reactive cuts, turns, things like that. But there's a lot of force going through the joints, to the soft tissue. I wanna make sure that my joints, my tissues can handle that amount of force off on dry land. If I expect to do this the same on the mountain, if I'm jumping off of a feature, if I'm jumping, landing, etc., how do you expect to be able to do that safely on a snowboard, on a wet surface if you can't or don't do that on dry land, all right? The other half of this being reactive speed. With snowboarding, I'm constantly having to examine my terrain, make split-second decisions, whether I am avoiding a feature, avoiding another child, another rider, etc., to eventually avoid injury. So reactive speed, if you have a partner, this is even better, but I'll just show you what it's like. I'm gonna start it relatively low. I'm gonna get in a nice kind of wider than shoulder stance. Essentially, when I drop this ball, I'm gonna react as fast as I can to catch it underneath, okay? Now, I'll show you the very basic version first. I'm gonna start it at shoulder length. So whenever I'm ready, all right, coming back up to standing. Now, make this a little bit harder. I'll show you from the other side. I'm gonna start it right about my waist, okay? Here we go. All right, so I'm driving that force down. Okay, now, a couple other ways to make this harder. One, if I had a partner, the partner can obviously drop it whenever they want. Secondly, they can also say what hand. So I can do this myself. If I want to catch it with my opposite hand, great. All right, like so, all right? Lastly, the other way to make this a little bit harder is to add a little plyometric squat, powerful squat jump afterwards. So here we go. Like so, all right? Super simple, but we're capturing a lot of different angles with this that can apply onto the mountain, so give it a try. Okay, third movement that I love, we have a curtsy lunge with a Pallof press. Now, it's a lot of words and it's quite a mouthful, but now we're working towards core strength, which connects the upper and lower extremities. It protects us, it protects our spine. It is arguably one of the most important muscles utilized, and when I say muscles, we're talking about the entire core, anteriorly, posteriorly, including the glutes and all of the fascia and etc., as well as lower leg strength, single leg stability, and mobility. All right, so what is a curtsy lunge? Just like so, as someone would curtsy, I'm dropping back down. I can go as far as I want, essentially. So if I wanted to get really weird, I could go as far back as there. If I can only do a slight tap, that's fine as well. Pallof press, it's that anti-rotational movement. All right, so again, if I have a band, you can be super creative with this. I've used tire rubber before, but essentially my most important feature is something elastic and an anchor that's not going to move, okay? So Pallof press is that counter rotation. Generally, you'll see this kind of movement, all right? But essentially this is trying to pull me to one side, so my core is having to do the work to counter rotate that, all right? Counter rotation often used in jibbing, stopping momentum in certain directions. We use our core to create more dynamic carves, etc. All right, so Pallof press plus the curtsy lunge. So I get in that nice slight squat position, Pallof press, tap. I can come back out and reset, or I can hold it there. All right, again, counter rotation, hold, tap, and back. Ideally, I could keep it there, but it's totally up to you, all right? So combining two very challenging movements. If I wanna make this harder, add an unstable surface. Now we work on that proprioception and overall difficulty. If I wanna make this easier, use a lighter band. Go get it. Okay, next, number 4, Some of my favorites, bear crawls. It is a bodyweight movement that is very effective. It's a full body movement, emphasizing quad strength, core strength, shoulder strength, stability, etc., etc. A little bit of mobility and flexibility involved as well. But now we add a little bit of dumbbells and a little bit of power creation, okay? So what do? We get in that nice, I guess what would you call it, bear crawl position. And if you can't see it from there, what you're seeing here is this. So my knees aren't touching the ground, they're hovering, all right? My shoulders are stacked. All right, it's gonna be harder if my weight is back or my weight is forward, okay? So it's gonna be a lot easier. If this is hard on your wrist, make sure to just make fists, okay? So we're calling these bear crawl step throughs. So what does that look like? It's step, step, you choose a side, opposite arm, opposite leg, back. Now we do the other side, step, step. All right, and I can go back, and then, all right, so what's going on here? Like I said, this is a full body movement. If any of you have done a, what's it called, renegade row, kind of like that, but essentially a little bit more complicated. You can do this without dumbbells if you want to make this a little bit easier. The key being hover those knees, stack those shoulders, enjoy. Okay, last but not least, the fifth and final strength-based movement. We have unilateral, no, I would say unilateral is not the right word, but we have tiptoe squats with a weight on a single side. So I guess you could say unilateral, all right? But both of our feet are planted. Unilaterally being the weight on one side. So what's the point of this? It gets our core involved a little bit more. That's the whole reasoning behind it. It forces our body to find that equilibrium. All right, so tiptoes, just like it sounds, we get in that tiptoe position. The main snowboard factor here is we can work on that tilt, on that toe side, heel side, but it also adds a degree of instability, some balance component, as well as emphasis on those quads and glutes, which are, again, primary muscles used with snowboarding, okay? And then again, with that core. So what do? We get in that tiptoe position. I'll show you from the side here first. You don't have to use a kettlebell. I am. Dropping down, dropping down, dropping down. Go as far down as you can go. Driving back up as fast as you can with power, utilizing those glutes and quads. And again, let me change sides. I'll do it facing this time. Key here being keep those heels raised. Drive back up as far as you can. We're also utilizing our calves, all right? When you're done, you can drop those heels down depending on the weight. Because this is a little bit more specialized and the amount of weight that you're using, I would probably want to see 8 to 12, kind of that general range. If you want to use a lighter weight, no weight at all, increase that rip range from 14 to 18. You can get pretty weird with it. Okay, all finished. Hopefully you learned a little bit on why these are my favorite, how they can apply to this upcoming snowboarding season or in season. But again, these are just a fraction of the movements that we utilize in our day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month. If you like these movements and you want to learn more, definitely check out our programs or memberships. I'm always going through and talking about a variety of movements and how they can benefit you, how they can keep you riding longer, faster, stronger. But thank you so much for joining me as always, and I will see you all next time.